being able to volunteer some of your time as a trustee to a charity where you can bring some of those skills and you can bring that different insight and experience, don't underestimate how valuable that is to the charity.
Sat in the room, we have representatives from Oracle, Microsoft, AWS, Google, Capgemini, EY, and Deloitte. So, we have someone who's really good at cyber. We have some who are really good at complex business change. We have some real technology experts. We have AI advisors. It's just incredible when that group comes together.
Have you ever considered being a trustee or non-exec of an organisation? Or if you work in a charity, have you experienced what an expert digital trustee can bring? Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Virtue and Virtuosity. Now, this episode is for a few different audiences. It's for the CEOs of charities, it's for trustees of charities, but beyond that, it's also for tech leaders who are looking to broaden their life experience and do something really impactful for causes close to their heart. We're talking about digital trustees and digital or tech committees. I speak with three different people who've thrived in this environment. First up, we've got Sue Crichton, who we just heard from, and hear about her role at the Walk Wheel Cycle Trust, formerly Sustrans. Then we got Freddie Quek, and finally we have Mark Dearnley. I really hope you enjoy this and it inspires you. And make sure you stick around to the end when I give a short 3-step plan to improving the quality of tech governance in your organisation. Now I'm joined by Sue Crichton, who is a trustee with what I knew as Sustrans, but has recently changed its name. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you very much, Stuart.
Could you tell us the organisation you work for and maybe just a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely, no problem at all. So a bit about myself. So I'm a career technologist. As far as I'm concerned, technology is one of those awesome enablers to business transformation and can drive, huge amounts of good and huge amounts of change. I've had quite a varied career, worked in a number of different places, including 6 years at Cancer Research UK, which was a fantastic introduction to the charity sector and what could be done there. My day job now is I'm a technology consultant with KPMG, but my side hustles, if you like, I'm a trustee for the Walk Wheel Cycle Trust, which, as you said, is the charity formerly known as Sustrans, which maintains the National Cycle Network in the UK. And I'm also really proud to be chair of the board at the Charity IT Leaders Forum.
Yeah, as you were just saying that about the Walk Wheel Cycle Trust, I was thinking we have a lot of people who listen to this podcast whilst cycling. And in fact, one of the other guests, I might raise that with him, has told me that is his main time for listening to this. So I think probably you'll find a lot of people know Sustrans or Walk Wheel Cycle Trust, as it's now called.
Wonderful.
And also great to hear that you've been in the charity sector and worked in the charity sector and know quite a lot about it, which leads me on to what really I wanted to talk about today. So on this podcast, I've talked a lot about how having a good set of digital experience at a board level in a charity can really help. Can you tell me a little bit about your role as a trustee and how that works in terms of your digital experience?
Of course. So I've been a trustee with Sustrans, now Walk Wheel Cycle Trust, for just over 3 years. And when I was originally recruited to that, it was a very interesting process. It was my first trustee role, but the charity were very specifically, they had 3 open trustee positions, and they was very specifically looking for different skill sets, one of which was digital, because they had a very clear vision to say, we need a mix of different set of skills in our trustees, because the trustee aspect, the non-exec aspect of the board is there to guide, support, and strengthen the overall board. So I think it's absolutely critical to get that range of skills. So you've got the experiences, the lived experiences, and that sort of thing, so that you can both challenge and support the board that you're working with.
There'll be some people here who understand exactly what a trustee does, and there'll be others who have less knowledge. In terms of that actual interaction with the charity and in terms of the knowledge you give, how does that work? And particularly I'm thinking about the interaction with the executive leadership team, with the technology leader within Walk Wheel Cycle Trust and the team. How does all that work?
Sure. So we've got, I'd sort of articulate both the formal interaction and the informal. So the formal is the formal board meetings and committees. And those will vary slightly from charity to charity. But for example, at Walk Wheel Cycle Trust, we have 4 main board meetings every year, which vary between half a day and a day. And then we have different committee meetings. We've got the Finance and Risk Committee, we've got a People Committee, an Impact Committee, and an Estates Committee. And that's a smaller subset of the board, and they meet usually 4 times a year as well. So you have those formal interactions, and in those, for example, and for the last year at Walk Wheel Cycle Trust, we've been talking an awful lot about what should our strategy be going forward, what should our brand be, how should we be working. The exec board, so the formal exec team, do most of the work, and they, as part of their day jobs, they're in there sort of saying, oh, it could be this, it could be this. They bring it back to the wider board where you've got that group of non-execs, so the trustees sitting with them, and say, hey, this is what we think we're going to do. This is where we want to go. This is why. And we have the opportunity to challenge, support. We get into some absolutely fantastic conversations. And I think it really helps because the exec board are always really well prepared, and they've sort of really thought through, what do we want to be? What do we want to do? What are the challenges with that? They bring different complexities where we've got org changes, what the impact of that is. And so the trustees have the opportunity to weigh in, to discuss, to challenge, and say, well, have you thought of this? What about this? Maybe we could tweak that there. And so it becomes a collective effort. So I'd say that's the kind of formal side where we've got the formal meetings. Informally, then, we each maintain different relationships. So we have some sort of champion hats. So for me, I wear the digital champion hat, and also the fundraising because of my experience with cancer research. And so then I meet on a sort of semi-regular and more informal basis with both the IT director and the fundraising director. And we bounce around ideas. They can use me. So, for example, last year we had a challenge with an ERP implementation. And so I worked with the IT director and actually also with the wider finance team to sort of go through and say, right, okay, what can we do here? Because I've got some experience there that they could draw on that they didn't have.
I like that mixture of the informal and the formal. You've got that formal reviewing things, bouncing around, being that space to actually look as a board to work with the exec to actually understand that. But you've also got the informal mentoring, almost. I'm calling it mentoring, but that role which works quite well. I'm trying to shape this in terms of people who might be considering becoming a trustee, also people who work internally within charities and understanding how they can work best with their trustees, and also people who just want to know more about it. So I guess my first question then around that is, what would you find would be the most important things you could get from a internal IT director who's working with your board? What fills you with confidence when you start working with an IT director and they really work well? As a trustee, what really fills you with that confidence?
I think it's the confidence that they know what they're doing. And when you ask questions, they can go, oh, yeah, this is why, this is what we're doing. So as an example, so I chair the Finance and Risk Committee for Walk Wheel Cycle Trust. And I had requested that at one of our recent meetings, that we had a review of our cyber security strategy and approach, because obviously a lot of cyber attacks going on, and I wanted a view of that so that the trustees could look at that. And our RT director came and presented it. And not only had he written a good, thorough paper that sort of explained things very well and what he was doing and why, but when we asked him questions, when we dug into it, he had the clarity. He had the ability to go, oh, well, yeah, no, we've thought about that, but we're doing it like this. This is why we're doing that. So those are the things that give confidence. And I think the best relationship between the trustee and the people in the charity, it is that sort of, it's not a police role. I wasn't there to mark his homework and then say, oh, I'm going to give you 8 out of 10 for this one, because actually we've all got the same interest. We're there for the best interests of the charity, and to make sure that, we're finding that balance between protecting the charity and not squandering our resources. So I think, just being able to have a good, well-informed conversation with the team, that's what builds up the trust.
And I'm going to build on that because I've been in the position of that IT director taking the cybersecurity paper to the finance committee or whatever committee it's called.
Most IT directors would have been in that position.
And it's often a slightly daunting thing because you're like, okay, I've got to write a good paper, I've got to make it short enough that they'll actually get read properly, but long enough that includes all the detail, and I've got to make sure I really bring that across in my what might be only squashed down to a 10-minute slot if the meeting's a particularly busy meeting or something like that. And so you have that challenge. But I'm guessing as a chair of a finance committee, as a trustee, what you're looking to do is to try and make sure that you've got the right controls and knowledge to understand if cyber is being well executed, which is a difficult thing sometimes to get across. And for me, I think what I found is the importance is having knowledgeable people on your committees who understand cyber. And if you didn't have that knowledge, if your trustee board wasn't lucky enough to have you on there and they instead had to have someone with a different range of experience, that conversation gets quite difficult because the IT director is swimming around with a group of people who don't really understand what you're trying to explain.
Completely. And I think, that circles back to sort of, exactly the point why it's so important to have the diverse skills and experience on the board. And, cyber is a very, very relevant one of those. Equally, it's really important to have people who understand finances to be able to look at the accounts. And as I said, I chair the Finance Risk and Audit Committee. I am not an accountant. And so I do heavily rely on two of my fellow trustees who are accountants. And so, from that side of thing, they can look at those things with a different level of detail. Whereas something like the cyber report that comes, they look to me and sort of go, well, okay, so this is your area. You know this bit. And so that's, I think that exactly makes the point on why it's so important to have those different skills. And it's not just to be able to sort of challenge, but also support. And that's, I think, where that informal side comes in that I see my role as a trustee as much about mentoring and supporting our IT director, because it's my role as a trustee. It's in my interest for the charity to run well, to run efficiently, to run safely, and to be able to deliver on our core purpose. So, being able to use my experience to help people in the team who might not have the same lived experience as me is the key part of that.
Yeah, and I've found that in the past. When I've been on the role of reporting into a trustee board, having the opportunity to build a relationship so that we can have a mutual understanding that we're both sort of fulfilling different roles in terms of the technology, but we're both trying to get towards the same place. I guess the other thing I'd like to just flip it around. There's a lot of people who will be working in leadership positions in charities who might be thinking, do I want to be a trustee? Or even outside of the charity sector, people who are working in commercial organizations and would like to be a trustee. Can you tell us a little bit about, why would you do it? What do you get from it? Because some people might say, just a sec, so this is an unpaid voluntary role. Why would I give up a day, a month of my time to do this? Could you just tell us a little bit more about what you get for this and why people should consider being a trustee?
Absolutely. This is the easy answer for me. It's the most satisfying part of my work life, if you see it. I mean, I have my day job, which is great. It pays all the bills. That's fantastic. I enjoy it. I enjoy the challenge. I always describe my trustee roles as kind of feeding the soul rather than the bank account. And it feels really good to be part of something, to feel that you're giving back, that my experience, my expertise can be used to help a charity that, might not be able to afford that kind of skill and expertise. Most charities, especially today, have got such tight budgets and, such a focus on what they're trying to deliver, delivering against their core purpose. I just find it feels awesome to be in a position that I can give back to that. So, yeah, for me, it's very much the altruistic side of it, of just feeling that I'm doing something good. I'm not just donating my money, but I can give some of my time and experience.
And in terms of that time, how much time do you feel you have to devote? Does it take up more of your time than you'd like? Do you struggle? Does it work well?
it's always going to be a challenge. And I think because I have the two trustee roles, it's a slightly bigger challenge for me to sort of juggle that against the day job. I'm exceedingly lucky because my employer gives me 6 days a year volunteering time. So I don't have to use holiday. I mean, I use a little bit of holiday and a little bit of my own time to support it. But I'm very lucky that KPMG recognises the value of volunteering and doing that and really encourages us. So I would say I probably put 2 to 3 days a month into my role, of which half comes from my employer and half is my own time. I don't regret it at all.
That's really great, Sue. Were there any other things that you wanted to mention, or things that in relation to digital trustees or trustees in general, or anything?
I think all I would say is obviously digital is a very, very relevant skill for the future. Charities are going to need to be able to to utilize that, to leverage it. As we've said, they frequently struggle with budget, struggle with that sort of thing. And, being able to volunteer some of your time as a trustee to a charity where you can bring some of those skills and you can bring that different insight and experience, don't underestimate how valuable that is to the charity. It's fantastic. I get a huge amount of satisfaction out of my trustee roles. I'd recommend them to anyone.
That's a great place to end. Well, Sue, it's been brilliant having you on today. Good luck to continue working with Walkwheel Cycle Trust and also the Charity IT Leaders Group. Thanks very much.
It's been fabulous talking to you. Thanks, Stuart.
And now I'm joined by Freddie Quek. I'm not going to attempt to introduce Freddie because whilst some people, I just asked them to describe what their role is, Freddie's got a lot of different roles. I think you don't just have a single job to describe. So maybe you could just give us an intro broadly, how it holds together, what you do.
Sure. So, Stuart, thanks for having me. I have been a technology leader for many years and in many different industry sectors. Right? I started mostly in publishing. Then, the last 10 years, I find myself across, travel, insurance, loyalty, higher education, automotive, the works. Yeah. So that's my exposure. And I've got to a point whereby, in my previous role, I was with Times Higher Education. I was a CTO there. I was also trying to finish my research. So I got to a point where we say, look, maybe this might be a good time for me to take a bit time out just to do that. And of course, there's only so much research you can do because it's mentally very taxing. And so I decided that maybe this might be a good opportunity to pilot my future life, right? So this is about, I've heard about people doing fractional, people doing all kinds of things. Maybe this might be a good opportunity just to do it. And that's how I find myself partially being a research student. I have a number of non-executive roles and doing a bit of volunteering. But at the same time, because of AI, started becoming a tech advisor to a number of AI startups.
Wow, so that is a lot. And the focus for this chat is all around non-exec and trustee roles in charities and not-for-profits. So I've been talking to a couple of other people all around what they do and who they work with. So do you have specific organizations that you work with in that context?
Yeah, so if you talk about charities, then what is interesting is that I'm on the board of trustee at the University of Bristol. So there's also a charity. I find myself being on the advisory board of the Royal Society of Chemistry, and I've just been appointed to be on their publishing board. As a member of the BCS Charter Body for IT Professionals, I'm also on their influence board.
So that's great because that's a really broad range of experience in trustee or non-exec or governance advisory roles, which is what I'm really interested in. And a lot of organizations have, well, charities all have trustees and most organizations have non-executive bodies, but they don't always have someone who has a good understanding of digital or technology or AI. And that's specifically what I'm interested in, is how it works when you've got someone who's got that knowledge. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works, where you're an advisor with that specialist knowledge, and how you bring that to help the organization?
Very, very good question. I think this is also one of the reasons why I'm doing my research, because I find myself when I was working for organizations, even though I'm the technology leader, and even though the business has been very disrupted by technology, yet you don't find that you have enough of a technology voice at the top table. So that makes me curious about what can I do to help to understand that issue, and how can I support doing something about it. So doing the research is that. The other way is getting that first-hand experience of being on board. So the ones that I've been part of is really good that they recognize the importance of having somebody with a sort of a technology digital background to support them. And I'm enjoying in the sense that that is an area clearly I have something to offer. So that feels good that, because, for example, every board member is supposed to be able to understand financial numbers of any kind, right? You put in front of them a document about P&L and all those things you're supposed to do. But yet, if you put something in front of the board about technology, I don't think that that is the case. So that is where I felt like the role that I can play is to help to educate the board in terms of what they should all know. There are some things that are very technical that is very hard for them to know. There's something that is so basic that they should know. And I feel like that is at least something that I can make them aware and help elevate that understanding of technology, because it's so important for many organizations today. And yet I still find that there's such a big gap in terms of what, organizations and leaders should know, and they're not quite there from my perspective.
And do you find that it helps? So you mentioned you were involved in a number of different organizations. Do you find that you can bring knowledge from one organization into another organization, and by having those multiple roles, they complement each other?
Yes, just from the fact that you have that broader perspective, right? There are some issues that are prevalent across all organizations and leaders, right? And then there's some issues that may be more domain specific. But for example, if you're talking about being aware of the latest technology and what can it do to help you to transform your organization, that would be a useful conversation if you know what those things might be. So when I was in publishing, I helped to sort of champion, the use of, now we take it for granted, right? In those days, there's only relational database such as Oracle, but then you have NoSQL technology that, by the way, there's hundreds of them. So which ones do you pick? But at that time, people don't even understand that there is another way of solving a problem for publishing, because publishing content is such that it is very hierarchical, it's very nested, and you want to sell the product in different ways. How can you possibly push them into one sort of model of holding data? And this is where, if you have a bit more understanding of technology, then you can play to the strengths of what technology can do to solve your business problem.
That's quite good that you're able to bring that knowledge. But do you find that also you develop internal relationships? You mentioned you help to educate a board, but presumably there's a non-exec or a sort of trustee board level, but then there's an executive level and sort of the people who lead the different directorates. Do you try and build those relationships internally with the team as well? So like the CDIO or the CTO or the tech leader.
Definitely, I think it is such an important function of the board and its sort of members, yeah, because you're there for a reason, right? And you're there to sort of contribute in a number of ways. One as a collective, so right, so usually you have to make decisions. Usually there are big decisions, which is why, especially in the charity sector, the board has an important role to play in terms of helping to make those decisions. But the day-to-day work is being done by the exec team, and the boards have been part of the exec teams has been excellent. So you're there to be their sounding board. You're there to support them. You're there to guide them if they want you to. I think the important thing is to remember that you can't be the expert in everything. Neither should you be, and you are definitely not there to help them to do their job, right, or to do it for them. But what you can do is to ask good questions of them, so that it allows them to think a bit harder about either the questions that they maybe have not thought through clearly, or the answers that they have, but then you're able to challenge them a little bit, so it makes them go a little bit further.
I think that's a good way to explain it. I know from my side, as from when I've been in CIO roles, I've had to report into a board, and where you have people on that board who really understand technology, you can have quite a vibrant, detailed, in-depth conversation. Whereas if you don't have people who understand the technology, it's a lot harder, because you have to frame the conversation in terms of things that they might understand better. So you have to work harder and frame it in terms of risk or in terms of overall benefits to an organization. Whereas the technology conversation, you have to abstract a level of detail if you don't have the experts. Whereas if you do have the experts, it can really enable a much better level of interrogation of plans and strategies, I think.
Yeah, and if I can sort of add another dimension to this, right? So, you asked about the question of what is the relationship with the exec team, and how can you help them? You can imagine at one level, most boards are concerned about strategy, about cost, right? But I think one of the things that you can do is to 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 be a sounding board to some of those key exec members, where they are not only challenged in terms of, let's say, the cost element of what they have to do, but also sometimes the possibilities, sometimes the ways of working. So if you have that broader context, you can bring, how somebody else have done it somewhere else into this organization that they may not have seen it. So, for example, one of the things that I find that I can contribute a lot is that typically the conversations may start off with doing projects and calls, but eventually it end up to a place whereby you're asking very simple questions such as the benefits, right? Because you can do it for sure, you can do it in this way or that way, but you need to be very clear what the benefits are. And sometimes the benefits are, especially in the charity sector, it may not be about making lots of money, but you still need to question where's the benefit of value that it brings to the organization, right? So you're sort of bringing sometimes a sort of a commercial lens on something. Are you sure you want to do this thing? Is it worth doing this thing? Because you got so many things. Why do you choose to do this thing? And why do you choose to do this thing in this way?
I guess just one other question I wanted to ask you was really all around personal motivations for you yourself. I mean, you could have just stuck with a career where you just stayed in a single job where you didn't work in lots of different committees and boards and governance areas. What do you get from it? How do you find it helps, and how do you find it interesting for yourself?
Yeah, I think we're all driven by different motivations at different times of our career, right? So, for example, in the early part of my career, I work very hard because of my own ambition. I work very hard because of my family. So those things takes me down a certain path, right? So you're guided by, okay, the kinds of job that you do and the kinds of, you know, package that you want to have, right? So there's that, but you also get to a point where you have different motivations. So I now want to, I feel very privileged to be where I am today, and I want to find a way to give back both to my profession and also to sort of generally about the fact that, for example, I'm passionate about digital inclusion. And part of the reason why is that for a long time, I was motivated by the fact that knowing technology is cool, being able to make that happen for organizations is really cool. And I only had that single purpose of, let's just get everybody on it, right? Then the world will be a better place. And it's only during COVID that I realized that, wow, this huge assumption that I had that everybody can be part of it is so wrong. I mean, I see my children's being privileged with a dad who knows a thing or two about technology, and they struggle. I struggle too, and I see many of my peers, and that's how it raised that consciousness for me about the fact that, wow, despite the fact that technology can be good, and by the way, the BCS purpose is to make IT good for society, that really reminded me about, as a senior member of that membership organization, what is my role in it to make IT good for society. And therefore, I started the BCS Digital Divide Specialist Group, and we had this purpose of leaving no one behind, right? So that is how it gets connected up to sort of my day job and my purpose, my passion for using technology. I now want to use technology for good for everyone, not just for those who can, right? And if I may add one other comment, and what is really interesting is now that I thought I'm a little bit more savvy about the situation, those who can't, let me find a way to help them. The truth of the matter is that we are no, even though we're in this digital world, but it's not a binary world, meaning that we're not switching everybody from physical to 100% digital. There's no way that's going to happen. But yet, the way we design solutions, the way we think about it, assumes that, right, that 80-20 rule, where if it's good enough for 80%, it's good enough for everybody. That assumption is so wrong. And one of the communities I've joined up, and I'm part of that community too, which is the Worshipful Company of Information Technologies, right? They also have a sort of a panel on digital inclusion, and is helping to drive another narrative on top of leaving no one behind. And that narrative is, but for those who cannot, we got to make sure that we find an alternative way for them to continue to participate and contribute. So I think you can see this topic that started from just being having a passion for technology gets you to a point where you realize that you can still have that passion, but there is a bigger, broader responsibility here, which is we have this superpower to do stuff like this, but we got to make sure that we use that superpower to make sure that we can truly be more inclusive of everybody who needs to be part of it.
I'm glad you got in that bit about digital inclusion there, because I know that you've done a lot of work in that area. But for anyone listening to this, I guess what I'm hearing is find the passion, find the niche, the thing that you want to do, and try and tie together the organizations you're working for to try and understand. And for you, it's about digital inclusion, trying to make sure that no one gets left behind. So as you can work with different organizations to try and help them understand what that means for them as an organization.
And if I can sort of offer that as a comment, but also as a challenge to my peers in the tech sector as professionals, right? When we talk about having a digital strategy for our organization, when we talk about digital transformation, we got to make sure that we don't forget about those who are not part of it today for some reason. Digital strategy has to include everybody. So have a think about that question, and then you will figure out a much better strategy than thinking that you've got one, and then you then realize that you're only helping 80% of the population and leaving 20% behind.
That's a great note to finish on, Freddie. I like that. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
That's one final thing I forgot to mention, that because you talk about charity. So I'm a trustee of a loneliness charity in the UK. So just it's not just about universities, it's not just about professional bodies, but also for third sector organizations. So yeah, hopefully that helps to bring a bit more sort of completeness into the answers that I've been giving you today. Yeah.
It does very much. Well, thank you very much, Freddie. It's been brilliant having you on here, and good luck with your mission about the making sure that the 20% don't get left behind.
Thank you, Stuart.
Hello, and now I'm joined by Mark Dearnley, who is a trustee at the King's Trust. Hi there, Mark.
Hi, Stuart. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, fantastic to have you on, because I know that you're a keen podcast listener, and you told me that you actually listened to this whilst was it on your bike?
Yeah, I use my cycling trips, firstly to get fit to do the King's Trust Palace to Palace ride every year, and secondly just so that I can listen to your podcast along with one or two others.
That's absolutely awesome. Thank you very much. And I tell you, so also on this episode, which I haven't had a chance to play you, but we've also got Sue Crichton, who's a trustee at Sustrans. And so she talks a little bit about her role as a trustee there as well, which I think you'll be fascinated to hear.
Brilliant.
From the start here, I should say that Mark and I have both sat on different sides of the same committee. So I've reported into a committee at the King's Trust, and Mark sat on that committee. And I thought it'd be really good to have this bit of a conversation, because it shows both sides of it. So I guess maybe, first of all, Mark, it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about yourself, about how you got into this. Do you have a day job? What your role is? How it all works?
So I've been helping the trust now for 6 years. So I've been a trustee for 6 years. How I got into it was a headhunter phone call. I suspect that is linked to what has been my day job for the last nearly 30 years now as a CIO across, or CDIO, CTO, CDO, whatever is in vogue at the time, across many different industries, from aerospace to automotive to retail, government, and various different ones. And so I think what they were looking for was a deliberate recruitment process for trustees with some tech and digital background. So that's how I got into it. I have to say it's been a fantastic 6 years. Unfortunately, in a few more years, my time will come to an end. But it's been really great to be able to help the trust. In terms of where then the tech committee fits into that. So the trust is governed through a council, which is like a board where all the trustees sit. And then, like most sort of corporate boards, the council has a series of subcommittees, all the usual ones, risk and audit, nominations committee. And then being a charity, it also has a young persons committee, which looks at the products and also safeguarding, really important. And then because we raise money, we have an ethical fundraising committee as well. In addition, not long after I arrived, we created an extra committee, which is the Technology Committee. And that was set up because we could see over the period there was going to need to be a lot of acceleration of the use of digital to be able to help young people. And so the committee was formed to be able to advise the council, and I think advise is a really important word here. It doesn't make decisions, it just advises. The executive run the trust, the council governs, the committee advises on the current and the future tech estate and how well things are working and whether there are risks and gaps and all those kind of things. So it's been a really interesting committee to get up and running. The committee is made up of a combination of trustees and then what we call external advisors. So there's 3 of us as trustees on the committee. And then we have representatives from all the great technology companies in the UK. Actually, it's amazing the people that we have on the committee as trustees. We just sit there in awe as we learn so many things from them. But sat in the room, we have representatives from Oracle, Microsoft, AWS, Google, Capgemini, EY, and Deloitte. All of them bringing their tremendous knowledge. Some amazing people we have, and then each of them having different specializations. So, we have someone who's really good at cyber. We have some who are really good at complex business change. We have some real technology experts. We have AI advice. It's just incredible when that group come together. So, long explanation, but that's how it kind of all comes together. And hopefully that then helps both the executive and the council to be able to do more for young people within the trust.
So, Mark, I didn't interrupt at any point there. I had lots of questions, but I wanted to hear that because I think any charity listening to that, most charities, the leadership will be quite jealous, especially the technology leadership, because you've just explained. So you have an advisor, not an advisory person, an advisory committee. And not only that, you've then gone on to explain that this tech advisory committee has advisors from all the top technology companies and consultancies. And what better position could you be in as an organization? I mean, as myself, someone who's been a CIO, CTO, having a board of people, a non-exec group of people like that who can advise you is worth its weight in gold.
It is amazing. And I will say, not only do they advise, they also bring in pro bono support. So each one of them will have volunteered, genuinely volunteered, to either sponsor one of the initiatives and sit on, maybe a steerco or something along those lines, or bring into different conversations experts from within their organization, or have some of their people develop either product that's going to be used with young people or prototypes to help us with our thinking. I mean, it's just such a privilege and a pleasure to work with this amazing group of people.
So how did that happen then? I would say any charity sitting there might be feeling green with envy. I'd love to just hear, how do you get from not having that committee to having a committee that has lots of really great advisors? How did that happen?
Firstly, as a charity, we're very lucky to be supported by so many organisations across the UK. And I think, well, we set it up with a vision and a purpose. And when we started it, we were clear what we wanted to achieve. We're lucky in that in, different part of the trust, many of these organisations are helping with fundraising, and many of these organisations work closely with the trust to either bring young people into their organisations or fund young people developing themselves to move into other organisations. But we sat down and we said, how do we want it to be? How do we want it to work? And then we just approached, and asked. Some of them were personal contacts, some of them others had relationships with, but they all saw the value. And for some of them, there's some personal value because at different points of people's careers, becoming a non-executive, which is kind of what this is, that there's no fiduciary rights here, but it allows them to develop themselves as people for some of them. And for others, they can see it's giving people in their organization a chance to be able to learn and develop more. So I think there's just a great win-win across all of it. And yeah, we've been very lucky, and it's a fantastic charity, the King's Trust, and we're supported by some amazing people.
So my motivation here in doing this is actually, so having reported into this committee on a couple of occasions, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And what I wanted to do as part of this podcast and in interviewing a few people was to try and inspire a few other charities and a few other chief execs, CTOs, and also maybe trustees or chairs of the boards to realize that if their organization is serious about technology, digital, AI, all of these things, and has some strong ambitions, that a tech committee would actually be really helpful. And to make them realize that actually they could achieve exactly what the King's Trust has achieved. And that's not an unsurmountable goal. There's many, many organizations out there that if you can find the people who really support your organization, you can do this yourself. It's not an insurmountable goal.
I agree. It's fantastic that we have all these brilliant, big name companies and some amazing people from them. But there are thousands of great technology companies across the UK.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in each one of them, there is someone who would love to help their local charity or, a collection of charities, because I think you get something back in return. I'll put it the other way around. I have learnt so much from being able to do these things with the King's Trust that I can take back into my day job as well. It's a beautifully sized organisation, the Trust, where you can watch it test a few things and think, oh, those would scale up into a larger organisation, or that's ahead of where we are, or I've just heard something from Google that perhaps I might want to take back into my own organisation. So I think it works two ways for everybody that's involved.
So that was what I was going to go into next. Yeah, the personal motivation, because it's not something which is paid, but it is something which you have to put time into, and it is not just a couple of hours a year or an hour here or an hour there. There's more time than that. Um, you've got to have time. You've got to either feel that you can take some of your own time out to do this, or you've got to have a sympathetic employer who buys into why you're doing this. How does that work for you, Mark? Do you actually find the time? Do you struggle? Do you find you can't make all your commitments work?
I think you need both. You do need a supportive employer, and you do need to be all in yourself. I think, as with most things, you find time for the things you want to do. And so I've never found it hard. I've been very lucky with where I've been and had a lot of support from my employer in being able to do it. But I think an employer should quickly be able to see what they're getting back in return of different perspectives and I think more motivated people as well. And personally, yeah, it's a thing I choose to do, as the +1 or the +10 or however you look at it on top of my normal day job. I just really enjoy doing it. I love working with the people at the Trust. The team there are incredible. I walk out every time I've been there more motivated than when I walked in because of the great people and the mission and what they're achieving for young people. So I find it very easy to find the time.
And in terms of getting stuff back from it, you mentioned that you see projects going on, you see what other organizations are doing, you think there's something there which might scale well or they're ahead of us. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but I'm rather curious about when that works if you're within the charity sector being a trustee for another charity. The reason I'm saying this is because I know a lot of people in the charity sector who then think I want to go and be a trustee for another charity. Have you seen anything like that?
I mean, I haven't seen that, Stuart. So this is just a view, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. I'm not sure you'd want a committee of only charity people helping charity people, but I think if it was a blend, I think I could also imagine how I'm just thinking in our committee, having someone in the room who was also in the charity sector may also bring a different perspective because you get a lot of enterprise people and they know how enterprise works and don't always appreciate the slightly different challenges of a charity. So I would say no reason why it couldn't work.
I'm just thinking of people I know, and they might be thinking, okay, I'll be going to sit on that group, and how will that work in terms of my own experience, sharing that experience. So my view from having seen it is actually I think it does work really well because I'm now going to go into what it's been like for me. So I also reported into that tech committee, and I absolutely, as soon as I saw, I'd never seen a committee like this, and I thought this was absolutely brilliant. This committee, because it enabled the CTO to be able to share some thoughts on what they wanted to do, but bounce it around a room of experts who it was almost like being able to have a workshop with a group of people who really understood things around technology and had seen what had worked in other places, and could give you all sorts of ideas you might not have had yourself. And it was a great opportunity. But the flip side of it was there was a little bit of a sort of, oh, how much do they understand what it's like in a charity? It's different if you've got a budget of £3 million to do something, or if you have a budget of, I don't know, 100 million, it's a very different challenge, and you've got different sets of resources. And so there is always that thought. But what I will say is that when you have a committee or you have trustees, they're in it for the long haul. It's not a short-term exercise. And over that period, they really do get to know the organization. And that's the difference between having someone who's from big tech or something like that coming in as a volunteer, where they're only there for maybe, or a consultant. Actually, that's the most common thing. You get a pro bono consultant from a large consultancy, and they come in and they do some work for a few hours, a few days or something, but they don't often understand the full context in the charity. Whereas if you're in there for the long haul as part of a committee, it's quite different.
And that's right. I should probably say, I mean, our committee members sign up for a 3-year term, and we do 4 meetings a year. They will typically do things in between those meetings as well. Not much, but a bit to stay in touch or be working on a project. And they can do up to 3 terms. So yes, people are not joining for 1 or 2 interactions. They're joining for a commitment. And if their life changes and they can't fulfill that commitment, then they gracefully leave the committee, and others will join. So yeah, I think you're right. It's a long-term partnership, in the same way as being a non-executive of an organisation is in a different context.
So, so I guess, Mark, what's next for you then? You've been at King's Trust for quite a while. Hopefully, you'll be there for quite a while to come yet. Are you thinking of other trustee roles? Are you thinking of how else you can help out in the sector?
I almost don't want to think about what next, because I enjoy it so much. I unfortunately I do run out of years in a couple of years' time. So I can only be renewed a certain number of times. So I will run out in 2 years' time. Until then, I'm all in with helping Julia and the team. And I have to plug Julia on this podcast, who is the CTO there, who is an absolute legend, and it is amazing to see what she and the whole team there do with what is a very tight budget, to your earlier point. It's incredible. You wouldn't think they ran every day on a charity budget, the amount they managed to achieve, which I think is a lesson to all of us. But now we'll see what comes next. But I don't really want to think about it. I just want to be all in on the trust.
That's great, Mark. I was secretly doing that. So basically, I've now got you to explain in 2 years' time, Mark might be available for other trustee roles. So any organisation out there who wants to snap up someone and try and start persuading him into why their charity is so great, it should be listening out. Mark, is there anything else we want to talk about? But what we've said has been fantastic. Anything else you wanted to add in?
No, look, we could talk all day. It's great.
Yeah.
It's just so good. It's just so much fun.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. It's great, and I can hear the enthusiasm in your voice for the sector and what you can do. And for the King's Trust. Probably we should just say we've given Julia a plug there. The King's Trust as well are doing some absolutely amazing work at the moment. Anything live we should mention?
No, it's incredible what the trust does. Last year, we helped 67,000 young people across the UK. That work continues this year. Next year, we're starting to prepare for the 50th anniversary of the trust. So expect a lot more things, but fundamentally, we're here to help end youth unemployment and every young person achieve what they are capable of achieving and getting to their full potential. So it's an amazing charity doing incredible things, and it's been doing it over a very long period of time. And if anybody out there wants to come and help support mentor young people, please go to the website and sign up. And if any of you want to donate as well, please go to the website and donate away.
Thank you, Mark. And yeah, it's no secret. I've done some work with King's Trust as well. I think a great organisation. And in this so relevant at this moment when there's a lot of perception of the challenges of the future, of what there might be for the future for young people in terms of work. And the King's Trust is right at the heart of trying to make sure that young people, especially from disadvantaged backgrounds, are well prepared for that future. So thank you very much, Mark. I'll let you get on with your day, and it's been great to have you on.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks. So there you have it, 3 different angles on the world of trustees and non-execs. And as promised, now my 3-step guide on building a tech committee. Number 1, do you have a trustee who is articulate, well-connected, and who really understands digital technology? If not, then make sure you're writing a JD for that role right now, and that's going to be the next trustee you recruit. Number 2, you've got to work with that trustee to tap their network and develop terms of reference for a tech committee. And then you've got to fill that committee with 5 or 6 volunteers who really understand technology and who have the time and the motivation to really devote to that committee. You might find that these people take a while to get on board. You might not even get this on day 1, but start somewhere. Even if you've just got 2 or 3, it's really important that you have that format to debate. And just remember, your first digital trustee is your best buddy to help you with this recruitment for the board. And then finally, number 3, you've got to work with that group and your internal tech leader and your CEO or CEO to develop an agenda for those meetings so that they become really relevant. Think of it like the other committees you have on the board. You might have a finance committee, you might have a safeguarding committee, but you could also think about it as a way to get expert volunteers who can really make a big difference to your internal tech team as well as your organization as a whole. And that's it, really. Digital trustees and tech committees. I really hope this episode has inspired you, and watch out for another episode coming soon. You've been listening to an episode of Virtue and Virtuosity brought to you by VirtueChain, the AI consultancy for the charity and not-for-profit sector. Did you know that there is also a newsletter that goes with this podcast containing news on AI and tech in the charity sector alongside a podcast summary? You can check out previous copies and subscribe through the link on the VirtueChain website at virtuechain.co.uk, or through LinkedIn, check out the profile of Stuart Miskilling, that's me, for the subscribe button to the newsletter.